A Democrat is arrested for targeting Republicans. The Kavanaugh vote approacheth, and a last-ditch attempt to stop Kavanaugh materializes. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. The excitement builds as we approach the Kavanaugh vote. Mitch McConnell has now filed for cloture. That means the vote on Kavanaugh will likely take place on Saturday. Perfect. I'll be off, so I won't even know what happened. The suspense will kill me on Saturday. Once again, God coming between me and the news. But, you know, that's just the way it works around here. Bunch of announcements to make up top here before we get into the latest. And today we're going to go through a lot of material, including the supposition that Brett Kavanaugh committed perjury on the stand, which is the new angle that's being taken. We'll talk about all of that. But first, I want to announce that tonight I'm kicking off my YAF tour, Young America's Foundation tour at University of Southern California. It starts at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, so you can watch me take on the left both in person and online. Come be a part of this fall's speaking tour. We have a bunch of universities we are going to. Bring your tumblers before the tear harvest is upon us. So that is exciting stuff. We are expecting that there will be protesters. There's actually some talk about violence, which obviously we hope does not occur. People have been going nuts over this speech, which it's always puzzling to me. Hey, me? Really? I feel like I'm a nice guy, but, you know, I'm admittedly biased. Also, we really appreciate you tuning in and sharing the podcast with your friends. If you enjoy what we're doing, please subscribe to The Ben Shapiro Show on iTunes, right? Go over on your iTunes right now and subscribe. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star rating. Go check it out. Please do that. If it's anything less than a 5-star rating, well, then just skip it. You know, we don't really need your opinion. Well, let's just be real. The only opinions that we care about are the ones that we like. But if you like the show, do it. It only takes a second. It really does help us out. Those iTunes rankings actually are based in part on the number of ratings that are given. So if you haven't rated us yet, go over and give us a 5-star rating over at iTunes. So go check that out. Also, the midterm elections are coming up. You may know this. This creates uncertainty in the market. It creates the possibility of a change in the governance structure because, God forbid, the Democrats win the House or win the Senate. This could change how policy is done. And that's why you ought to be taking at least some of your money and putting it in precious metals. It's a hedge against inflation, a hedge against uncertainty and instability. Gold is a safe haven against such uncertainty. My savings plan is diversified, and yours should be as well. The company I trust with precious metal purchases is Birch Gold Group. And right now, thanks to a little-known IRS tax law, you could even move your IRA or eligible 401k into an IRA backed by physical gold and silver, which is perfect for folks who want to protect their hard-earned retirement savings from any future geopolitical uncertainty. If you look back, when the bottom falls out of everything else, gold tends to safeguard savings. Gold has never been worth zero. Birch Gold Group has thousands of satisfied customers, countless 5-star reviews, A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Right now, contact Birch Gold to request a free information kit on physical precious metals. It's a comprehensive 16-page kit. Shows how gold and silver can protect your savings, and again, how you can legally move that IRA or 401k out of stocks and bonds into a precious metals IRA if that's something you're into. To get that no-cost, no-obligation kit and ask all your questions, go to birchgold.com/Ben. Ask all your questions, be certain about what you want to do with your finances, and then when you're ready to invest a little bit in precious metals, go check out birchgold.com/Ben. All right, now to the news. So, Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, has announced that he is invoking cloture, meaning that we are not going to allow the Democrats to filibuster the Kavanaugh nominee, and that means that by Saturday, the full Senate will be voting on Brett Kavanaugh. Here was Mitch McConnell yesterday announcing that he was going to file cloture on the floor of the Senate.
There'll be plenty of time for members to review and be briefed on the supplemental material before a Friday cloture vote. So I'm filing cloture on Judge Kavanaugh's nomination this evening so the process can move forward, as I indicated earlier.
And the process should move forward. The process should move forward because guess what? Shocker. It turns out that nothing has been found. Okay, we've now been doing this for another week thanks to Senator Jeff Flake and the idea that an FBI investigation was going to quell everyone's fears. Clearly that's happened. Clearly Democrats are now very satisfied with how this has gone. Everybody has a lot of faith in the FBI. Folks on the left, they really feel like a full investigation has been done, and they're feeling pretty satisfied about all this. Take, for example, Senator Dianne Feinstein, who took the results of the FBI inquiry, and she saw that it basically said nothing new. And then she said, you know what? I feel like this has been settled. I guess now I'll really consider Brett Kavanaugh's nomination. Or alternatively, she did what everyone knew what she would do, and she said, oh no, the investigation is a bunch of hooey, and it was never meant to be comprehensive, and therefore Democrats can't vote for Kavanaugh on that basis. Here is Dianne Feinstein, who really has just been, there's no other word for it in terms of the process that she's engaged in than evil. I mean, it really has been an evil process in which she's engaged, getting an allegation on July 30th, holding it for 6 weeks until just before the vote, releasing it without any corroborating detail, maybe releasing it anonymously in order to spur the full release of the story, and then grilling Brett Kavanaugh on supposed gang rape. Now, all of this has just been gross, but here's Senator Dianne Feinstein continuing her pattern of being gross by saying that the FBI investigation is incomplete. And because it's incomplete, therefore, that's really why we shouldn't vote on Kavanaugh.
But what I can say is that the most notable part of this report is what's not in it. As we noted by the White House, the FBI did not interview Brett Kavanaugh. We have seen even more press reports of witnesses who wanted to speak with the FBI but were not interviewed.
Okay, so I love that she says what's most important here is what's not in it. That's true, but not how she means it. So she says what's most important is all the people the FBI didn't interview. Well, that's because the people that she's talking about could provide no corroborating evidence. What's not in the report is that there is no corroborating evidence for any of Christine Blasey Ford's allegations. No corroborating evidence. None. The GOP Senate Judiciary Chair, Chuck Grassley, he says there is no hint of misconduct in confidential FBI report on Kavanaugh's sexual misconduct claims. He says there's nothing in it that we didn't already know. Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, at least Susan Collins from Maine, she is suggesting that the FBI process has made her feel a little more quiet about this whole thing. Maybe that's what Jeff Flake was going for. If so, well, we'll put the best possible spin on it. Maybe when Senator Flake called for the FBI investigation, he was just trying to get Susan Collins on board or provide cover for a couple of Democrats like Joe Manchin and Heidi Heitkamp to vote for Brett Kavanaugh. Also, the polling data this week has been brutal for Democrats. So that means that Joe Manchin and Heidi Heitkamp in North Dakota, that the two of them may in fact vote for Kavanaugh just to preserve their Senate seats. It is very likely right now that the Democrats, their chances before the Kavanaugh thing were not good with regard to taking back the Senate. They had about a 1 in 3 shot, according to 538's modeling, of taking back the Senate. Now that's down to about 1 in 4. And it looks like Republicans may actually pick up seats in the Senate. Even the advantage that Democrats have in House races has been reduced by half, as we talked about yesterday on the show. So this Kavanaugh thing has backfired pretty badly on Democrats. White House spokesman Raj Shah says the White House has received the Federal Bureau of Investigation's supplemental background investigation into Judge Kavanaugh. It is being transmitted to the Senate. With Leader McConnell's cloture filing, senators have been given ample time to review the 7th background investigation. This is the last addition to the most comprehensive review of a Supreme Court nominee in history, which includes extensive hearings, multiple committee interviews, over 1,200 questions for the record, and over 500,000 pages of documents. With this additional information, the White House is fully confident the Senate will vote to confirm Judge Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. President Trump tweeted out this morning, "The harsh and unfair treatment of Judge Brett Kavanaugh is having an incredible upward impact on voters. The people get it far better than the politicians. Most importantly, this great life cannot be ruined by mean and despicable Democrats and totally uncorroborated allegations." He's 100% right on this. Even Bret Stephens is expressing gratitude that Trump is president today, which is an amazing thing, right? Bret Stephens is about as anti-Trump as it's possible to be. He is a true never-Trump Republican. And he came out in the New York Times today and said, "I am very, very pleased that Donald Trump is president and standing by Brett Kavanaugh." Now, there are a lot of folks on the left who don't seem to understand why folks on the right are so passionate about this issue. The reason we're passionate about this issue is because it looks like due process and presumption of innocence have been tossed completely out. Now, in a second, I'm going to get to the counter argument that's being made by some folks, I think in good faith, folks like Sam Harris on his podcast. Now, I'm friendly with Sam, and we've been having a little bit of a text back and forth about this, and I'm not spilling any secrets. He said all this stuff publicly. I want to talk about that in just a second, but the way that Republicans are viewing this, the way conservatives are viewing this, the way independents are viewing this is a man was accused after 36 years of allegedly sexually assaulting a girl back when he was 17 years old. There is no corroborating evidence, and Democrats want to run him out of his life over it. And then the media have decided to latch on to every single rumor they possibly can in order to prevent Kavanaugh from joining the court. That's what this looks like. To anyone, I think, of objective eye, I don't even think it's conservatives. Anyone of objective eye, the process sucks. Now, there are two separate questions, and this is where I think it's worthwhile discussing the most intellectually honest version of the leftist case. There are two separate questions. Does the process suck? And does Brett Kavanaugh deserve to be on the court? Now, these two issues are not completely separate. The process and its suckage are one of the reasons why Brett Kavanaugh got himself into a little bit of trouble with regard to his testimony. I'm going to talk about the trouble he got himself into with regard to his testimony in just a second. But the suckage of the process is what most people are concerned with at this point, because it feels like whatever complaints are being made about Brett Kavanaugh are essentially fruit of the poisonous tree. And when you accuse a guy of gang rape and you start going through his yearbook And then your final case against him is he fibbed about stuff in his high school yearbook. And that's why he shouldn't be on the Supreme Court. That feels like fruit of the poisonous tree in the worst possible way. And in a second, I'm going to discuss that case. Also, it feels like the media are out to get Kavanaugh, because they are. Ronan Farrow has done some really good work on the Me Too stuff. Like some really excellent work on the Me Too stuff. And he completely has undermined his own credibility with regard to Brett Kavanaugh. So you recall that a week ago, The New Yorker, in a piece by Jane Meyer, who is not a good reporter, and Ronan Farrow, who is a good reporter, they put out a piece suggesting that a woman named Deborah Ramirez, back when she was at Yale, was at a drunken frat party, and Brett Kavanaugh unzipped his pants and exposed himself to her. And that was the accusation. It was at a party. She apparently considered it for 6 days because she wasn't sure that she remembered it correctly or that it was Kavanaugh. And then she came forward and told the story. There were no corroborating witnesses. Well, last night, The New Yorker decides that in order to undermine the credibility of the FBI investigation, they are going to come forward with new witnesses to Deborah Ramirez's statements. Well, that would be kind of a bombshell, wouldn't it? Except that's not actually what the report said. On Wednesday evening, The New Yorker runs this investigative piece from Meyer and Ronan Farrow. The piece claimed that the FBI investigation into sexual assault claims against Kavanaugh was insufficient. What made the investigation insufficient? Well, here's what they said. They said, quote, frustrated potential witnesses who have been unable to speak with the FBI agents conducting the investigation into sexual assault allegations against Donald Trump's Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh have been resorting to sending statements unsolicited to the Bureau and to senators in hopes that they would be seen before the inquiry concluded. So the FBI investigation is, just as Feinstein said, insufficient because there are a bunch of witnesses who've not been interrogated by the FBI, and they've been desperately reaching out to the FBI trying to tell their vital stories. What are their vital stories? Well, the key vital story comes from a guy named Kenneth Appold. Kenneth Appold, according to The New Yorker, was a suite mate of Brett Kavanaugh's at the time of the alleged incident. He had previously spoken to The New Yorker about Ramirez on condition of anonymity, but he said that he is now willing to be identified because he believes the FBI must thoroughly investigate her allegation. Appold, who is the James Hastings Nichols Professor of Reformation History at Princeton Theological Seminary, said that he first heard about the alleged incident involving Kavanaugh and Ramirez either the night it occurred or a day or two later. Appold said he was 100% certain that he was told that Kavanaugh was the male student who exposed himself to Ramirez. Well, okay, that's pretty damning stuff, right? I mean, here's a guy who's saying that he heard about Kavanaugh exposing himself at this party. So why isn't the FBI talking to him? Clearly, the FBI investigation is a ruse. Clearly, it hasn't been done thoroughly enough, and all the rest of it. Well, there's only one problem. Buried a few paragraphs down there in the story is a little spoiler that completely undermines the New Yorker's story. I will explain that spoiler to you in just 1 second. But first, let's talk about what you do in case of emergency. So you see there are these natural disasters. You see the videos of them on YouTube or on Twitter. You watch on TV as a tsunami or a hurricane hits, and you think to yourself, okay, am I really prepared in my own home? And the answer is, you're probably not. And that's why you need My Patriot Supply. When there's no power, refrigeration fails, and stores close, so what do? Well, that's when you need an emergency food plan. I trust My Patriot Supply for dependable food storage, and you should as well. People in the office have it. We have actually My Patriot Supply at the office in case an emergency hits while everybody is here at work, so we don't resort to cannibalism. I think it is fair to say that Austin goes first. Each person in your household should have at least a 2-week emergency food supply from My Patriot Supply. This week, they're offering a special price of only $75 for a food kit that contains 92 servings of breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. Call 888-803-1413 or go to my special website, preparewithben.com. This food lasts up to 25 years in storage. It's only $75. That includes a rugged tote. Order now, 888-803-1413 or preparewithben.com. 888-803-1413 or preparewithben.com. So go check it out right now. So how did the New Yorker undermine its own case? So they say, here's a witness who says he heard about Brett Kavanaugh exposing himself to a girl at Yale. Now, again, this is a different allegation than he tried to sexually assault somebody. This is a bad, drunken frat antic that is gross, but it's not quite the same thing as pressing yourself on a girl and putting your hand over her mouth, right? There are gradations of evil. This one is a little bit lower than the other one. But here's the big problem with the New Yorker story. Okay, the New Yorker story says this. This is actually what it says in the story. Quote, Appold said that he initially asked to remain anonymous because he hoped to make contact first with the classmate who, to the best of his recollection, told him about the party and was an eyewitness to the incident. He said he had not been able to get any response from that person despite multiple attempts to do so. The New Yorker reached the classmate, but he said he had no memory of the incident. So in other words, here's what the New Yorker is reporting. Here's their big bombshell. This guy heard secondhand about a party at which Kavanaugh exposed himself without permission to a girl. And this guy said, I'm not coming forward until I talk to the guy who told me the story. The New Yorker actually identified that guy who supposedly witnessed the event. And they went and they talked to him. And that guy said, I don't remember anything about that. Wouldn't that actually be the end of the story? Like in a normal journalistic standard, wouldn't that be the end of the story? If I spoke to somebody and they said, I heard a rumor from X that this happened and he was an eyewitness. And then I went and spoke to the eyewitness and the eyewitness said, no, don't remember anything about that. That would be the end of the story. The New Yorker ran with it anyway, because this is the length to which journalists will go to sink Brett Kavanaugh's nomination. And then that report in the New Yorker gets even worse. The New Yorker wrote that some of Kavanaugh's classmates said he was a bully in high school who laughed at other kids. This is a quote from the New Yorker story. In his statement, which his attorney, this is another witness, in his statement, which his attorney also sent to several members of the Senate Judiciary Committee on Tuesday, he described Kavanaugh as part of a clique of high school athletes, most of whom were on the football team, who routinely picked on less physically fit or popular students. He said he never witnessed Kavanaugh physically attacking another student, but he recalled him doing nothing to stop the physical and verbal abuse. Instead, he said Kavanaugh stood by and laughed at the victims. So what? So what? Is the implication that he shouldn't sit on the Supreme Court because he was a jackass in high school? And I mean like in the classic sense? Like he was a jerk in high school who was part of the popular kids clique? This is coming from a guy who was deeply unpopular in high school, right? I have no sympathy for guys who were bullies in high school or who stood by while bullying occurred in high school. I have no sympathy for that because I was a brutal victim of bullying when I was in high school. But being a victim of bullying does not mean that I think that anyone who was a bully in high school also raped chicks. I don't think that's a thing. Okay, there are a lot of guys in my high school who were the worst people imaginable in high school. I don't think any of them participated, and I have no evidence that any of them participated in sexual assault on girls. But that's the implication from the New Yorker story. And you wonder why the right is reacting with outrage to all of this? That's why the right is reacting to outrage. Why else? Because the left is now desperately attempting to make a series of claims about Kavanaugh that are unconnected to the original allegation. And I'll get to that in just 1 second. So, first, we begin with the response from Dr. Christine Blasey Ford to the FBI investigation, which came up with nothing new. Her attorneys, who are Democratic activists, they sent out a statement and said, quote, an FBI supplemental background investigation that did not include an interview of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford nor the witnesses who corroborate her testimony cannot be called an investigation. We are profoundly disappointed that after the tremendous sacrifice she made in coming forward, those directing the FBI investigation were not interested in seeking the truth. Okay, a few things. One, she testified under oath at length. There is no reason for the FBI to talk to her again. If she contradicts her story, she commits perjury. There's really no reason for them to talk to her. Second, they talked to all of the witnesses who gave sworn statements, and those witnesses did not back her story. When they say that the FBI didn't talk to the witnesses who corroborate her testimony, there are no witnesses who corroborate her testimony. None. Zero. Zip. Zilch. None. I want to, by the way, I have to debunk a talking point that's being used routinely by folks on the left with regard to Blasey Ford. There's this talking point on the left that women would never falsify, would never misremember, would never lie about allegations of rape. Now, I have tremendous sympathy for people who allege sexual assault. I do. I mean, when she first came forward, I said, this is a credible account, and I want to wait for corroborating evidence before I make a decision on this. There's no corroborating evidence forthcoming, and that's why I'm saying that Brett Kavanaugh can't sit on the court. I still don't know if she's telling the truth. You don't know either. Nobody knows, because there's no corroborating evidence and no witnesses. With that said, one of the things that's been put out there by folks on the left is that there's no incentive for women in high-profile cases to come forward. I have two words for you, Anita Hill. Okay, Anita Hill has been a hero on the left for the last 25 years. HBO made a full series about her. And if you think there's no incentive for women to come forward and shape the course of history, I find that highly doubtful. Highly doubtful. I mean, here was Time Magazine's cover this week. The Time Magazine cover this week is of Christine Blasey Ford swearing with her eyes closed, and her entire face is made up of words from her testimony. Does that look like somebody who has not benefited at all from the publicity? I would say that Christine Blasey Ford is one of the most worshipped figures on the left today.